Welcome to your Unit 5 video teaching on the Middle Ages. Please make sure that we watch this in full. You have a little exit ticket to do after you complete watching this, and then a really cool assignment where you are going to compare a character or an historical figure that shows up in today's lesson with a fictional character from a movie. So I'll explain that at the end of the lesson. Just follow along with these 4 slides worth of content, and then you'll be ready for your Unit 5 work. So the Middle Ages, very, very long stretch of years, and I'm going to highlight some key things or developments or civilizations that emerged during this time, starting with the Byzantine Empire. You can see in the top picture in purple, the Byzantine Empire grew to be quite large, and it's actually what used to be the eastern half of the Roman Empire. Rome didn't just disappear after its empire fell, it just got fractured. And the eastern half actually continued on as a very influential empire from the years 330 to 1453, highlighted by the success of the city of Constantinople, which, if you look real close south of the Black Sea, it's located into what you might know as the country of Turkey today. And Constantinople is actually what ends up turning into the city of Istanbul, which you could visit today if you wanted to. Also, in Western and Central Europe, you can see the map on the bottom, which also depicts the map of the Crusades. You had it's kind of a broad description of several iterations of different empires, but something called the HRE, or the Holy Roman Empire, which ruled, like I said, much of Western and Central Europe from 962 to all the way to like a couple hundred years ago, 1806. And it saw, and you can kind of hear it in its title, a unification or emergence or emerging of kings working with the head of the Catholic Church, which was the Pope. And during this era, to put it mildly, a lot of religious rivalries, both within Christianity and against other groups like Islamic people in the Middle East, are going to emerge. In fact, there's going to be a series of holy wars from about 1096 to 1204 called the Crusades in and around the city of Jerusalem. And a lot of these were financially and power hunger motivated, but a lot of it did have to do with religion. So religion and crowns are very much intertwined during the Middle Ages. Finally, for this slide, feudalism also emerged during the Middle Ages, and it was sort of, for multiple empires, the social, economic, and just political system and hierarchy that was created to create a form of organization. Was it the most fair thing in the world? Probably not, but it is the system that is associated with the Middle Ages. As depicted by this image here, generally speaking, a king or a queen would be the beneficiary beyond everyone else, like so many social class systems are. You can see the king, he's going to own all the land, and then it's going to be kind of a trickle down to his lords and vassals, down to the knights that provide military service, and of course the peasants that are going to work the land and receive, in quotes, protection from the knights, but often do the most work for the least benefit. So that right there is the feudalism system in a nutshell. Now, I'm going to hone in here on a specific document that is historically very famous. And if you saw pictures of it or the writing in full, you'd probably get bored immediately. But the Magna Carta is one of the most important written documents in the history of the world. A king of England, I think his name was King John, was kind of power hungry, power crazy, and his nobles and barons were sick of it. And they actually surrounded him and forced his hand to have to sign this thing called the Magna Carta. And it's gone down in history because it was one of the first times that, well, I guess in this case, lords or barons limited the king's power, that a king was checked in terms of what he or she couldn't do. And the Magna Carta promoted things like fair treatment for all citizens, limiting the power of someone that was in charge. And in a lot of ways, it's one of the first documents that's going to inspire ideas of freedom and democracy and fairness worldwide. And at least here, where I'm recording this lesson in the United States, Americans take things like the Declaration of Independence and Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which is part of the Constitution, very, very seriously. We take elections, most citizens do at least, very seriously. And historians point to the Magna Carta as one of the foundational things that inspired a lot of the ways we do governments and protect individual liberties in societies in the 21st century. So, a little bit of history impacting the world that we live in, um, which would be the Magna Carta. Now, a little bit of a more gloomy topic. One historic event that's going to happen in the Middle Ages is going to be something known as the Black Death or Black Plague. Recently in the world, we experienced a pandemic known as COVID-19, which certainly had a lot of negative effects and sadness across the world. But the Black Death certainly takes the cake against something like COVID-19. It originated around 1347. It was started in Asia and actually made its way to Europe via ships. A lot of times associated with rats was probably actually the fleas around the rats that gave the Black Plague, and then it would pass on to humans. And in short, you got to know it was horrible. It killed 75-ish million people. The death totals are hard to approximate, but it killed upwards of over like 50% of an entire continent, in this case, Europe, during this period. And thankfully, obviously, humanity survived and moved forward. And oddly enough, history often shows us that during horrible times, whether it's oppressive rulers, world wars, natural disasters, or in this case, a pandemic, that can often, at the end of it, light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, can lead to change. And historians have pointed that whether it's advancements in understanding medicine and hygiene and reshaping governments, and honestly, a lot of the fittest and most physically in shape people survived this. So, like in terms of evolution, humanity actually kind of improved physically on the back end of the Black Plague, and there was a lot of economic change and social changes that came out of Black Death. Obviously, horrible because of the amount of death that occurred, but historians often say it was a point of growth because of the immense tragedy that it caused. Moving on, the little bit of a setup for your assignment and a story here with something called the 100 Years' War. And this is going to pit two countries that are still around today, England and France, in a war from 1337 to 1453. Now, the first thing you might see when you look at the title and the years is, yes, the 100 Years' War actually was longer than 100 years. But 100 Years' War, it's a nice, clean, simple title, took place in modern-day France. And it's very historic, and it's really a bunch of wars bundled into one. But England invaded France and really dominated for the first half of the entire conflict. But odds changed for France for a variety of reasons, but one of the biggest stories is the emergence of a female hero, a teenage girl by the name of Joan of Arc, who was a peasant. And she claimed that God had given her visions to help lead and inspire France's armies. And she actually does that. She gets a meeting with the king of France, and I guess maybe because they were doing so poorly in the war, she was given an opportunity to be a leader and kind of a symbolic figure for the French army. And upon her arrival, if you will, France's military started performing a lot better and actually ended up reclaiming all of the territory that they originally possessed at the beginning of the war. Joan's story has gone down as legend. She's very much a French hero, but her story is very tragic because she ends up being captured by the English, and kind of a falsified trial is burned at the stake for witchcraft and heresy. She's forced to sign documents she can't read and stuff like that. But ever since her death, she's gone down as a French legend and somewhat of a female hero in history. Impacts of this war are immense as part of the Middle Ages. In a lot of ways, it encouraged the growth of national identities and taking pride in your ethnic background, and whether it's French pride or English pride or to come Italian pride or Polish pride and things like that, that's going to increase as a result of this war in Europe. And I would certainly say national identities and ethnic pride is central to Europe today. And then obviously the English monarchy was weakened with the French success by the end of the Hundred Years' War, and the French monarchy with kings around the corner with a Louis the 14th or Louis the 16th, their strength and power is going to be strengthened because of this war. A couple visuals. There's Joan of Arc depicted there on the left. You'll work with her more on your assignment. And then on the right, you can see the evolution of the maps in terms of French or English holdings as the war progressed. So top left, left to right, and then down at the bottom, 1453, bottom right, the end results of who controlled what between the French and the English. Obviously, for Unit 4, you didn't have a teaching lesson from me because you had the ed puzzle and assessment. If you haven't done that yet, please make sure you go back, especially the compare and contrast paragraph, as that was worth assessment points. For your work for Unit 5, you got a quick little exit ticket. I'd encourage you, based on what you just heard, to go do that right away. It'll take you no time at all. And then your second piece of work is the Joan of Arc versus Katniss Everdeen. Yes, the character from Hunger Games. There are some similarities and comparisons between the two, and you will explore that in that Google Doc for 8 points. So again, email me if you have questions. Make sure you get that work done before you head into your final module, the wrap up and final project in Unit 6. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at any time, and good luck with your work for Unit 5.